Chapter 6. Roots. I had attended on Ajaan Mun for 6 months at Pur Forest when he received a letter from Venerable Chao Kun Dhammachedi, the abbot of Bodhisattva Monastery and the chief administrative monk of the entire northeast province of Udon Thani. In his letter, Chao Kun Dhammachedi, who had been a disciple of Ajaan Mun since his youth, invited him to return to Udon Thani and settle in that region for the benefit of his many disciples there. Ajaan Mun had been born in the Lao-speaking northeast region of Thailand, of which Udon Thani is a part, and had spent many years wandering through its vast wilderness areas that border the Mekong River. Known colloquially as Isan, Thailand's northeast region was the homeland of many forest monks of that era and the birthplace of the Thai forest tradition. By the time he received Chao Kun Dhammachedi's letter, Ajaan Mun had been living and practicing in the northern province of Chiang Mai for over 12 years. Interestingly enough, a short time before the letter arrived, he had expressed a desire to return home, citing a wish to make his teachings available to a larger group of forest monks. Due to the remoteness of the northern region, only the most intrepid monks had managed to find him there, and their numbers were fairly small compared to the many devoted disciples he had left behind when he moved to the north. Ajaan Mun felt the time was right to reconnect with them in order to consolidate the Thai forest Sangha and ensure its longevity as a beacon of hope for future generations. In the past, Ajaan Mun had received many such invitations from Chao Kun Dhammachedi, but he had never answered those letters or accepted the requests. He was still considering this new request when Chao Kun Dhammachedi suddenly showed up at Pur Forest to invite him in person. He had traveled from Udon Thani to the isolated region where Ajaan Mun lived to speak with him personally, and thus give Ajaan Mun a chance to answer all his previous letters. Ajaan Mun smiled and said, "I've received all the letters you sent, but I didn't answer them because they were small and insignificant compared to your arrival here today. Now I am prepared to honor your request." Chao Kun Dhammachedi then formally invited Ajaan Mun to return to Udon Thani, a province where he had once lived many years before. He informed Ajaan Mun that he was offering this invitation on behalf of his disciples there, who missed his inspirational presence. Having received Ajaan Mun's consent, Chao Kun Dhammachedi suggested they set a timetable for his trip to Udon Thani. Due to Ajaan Mun's age and declining health, they deemed it wise that he travel the long distance by train. After a brief discussion, they decided on a departure date at the beginning of May that year, 1940. Ajaan Mun laughed like a lovable and distinguished elder statesman after the agreement was reached. Despite his obvious physical frailty, in that moment his appearance had an ageless quality. A master of the unconditioned Dhamma, he radiated warmth and vitality, while his demeanor displayed sublime elegance and grace. By his very presence, Ajaan Mun lent a clear sense of spiritual purpose to every occasion. People from all walks of life were naturally attracted to his aura of compassion and wisdom, which beckoned them to approach him and engage in conversation. These distinctive qualities are what I call aging gracefully. People who never attempt to practice meditation usually feel distraught when they recognize the telltale signs of aging and decline in their bodies and minds. They are unsettled when facing a loss of physical strength that leaves them unable to manage their own affairs. Those who pride themselves on their intellect are shocked when their sight and hearing decline and their mental faculties become dull and confused. Watching their physical and mental powers waste away frightens those who have spent their lives actively engaged in affairs of the world. For most people, aging is a cruel reminder of life's natural limitations. No matter how well they take care of their physical and mental well-being, both body and mind are bound to let them down in the end and cause them great discomfort. Without spiritual well-being to uplift their hearts and minds, they face the inevitability of death with fear and trepidation. Good health, a happy family life, wealth, and prosperity are the primary goals that most people pursue. Such mundane achievements are regarded by most as reliable sources of happiness. In their rush to find happiness in these ways, many people neglect to make a habit of giving generously, of adhering strictly to basic moral precepts, or of developing firm spiritual principles by practicing meditation. They fail to understand that these fundamental virtues are the true sources of happiness. Once old age sets in, the short-lived and hollow nature of their commonplace forms of happiness can take the elderly by surprise. As they cling futilely to the ebb and flow of the memories and experiences that make up their disappearing past, they are left to regret many unfulfilled aims and ambitions. This predicament is what I call mundane aging. In contrast, elderly practitioners who throughout their lives practice warm-hearted generosity, maintain a high level of moral virtue, and develop their minds with meditation will amass a storehouse of inner worth sufficient to guide them along the noble path to the end of all suffering. The highest levels of Dhamma are within their reach. The noble virtues of such elderly practitioners are lauded and respected by devas and humans alike. They are no longer attached to their physical appearance or their intellectual capabilities, nor do they feel lonely and isolated from the world around them. Some elderly practitioners even succeed in completely extinguishing the fires of greed, aversion, and delusion during their lifetime and pass away in a state of perfect purity. Like Ajaan Mun, for example. Their spiritual purity shines like a beacon of Dhamma, illuminating the hearts and minds of Buddhist practitioners the world over, while their loving kindness radiates in every direction, bringing peace and contentment to living beings of all realms of existence. This serenity is what I call supramundane aging. Witnessing these supreme virtues in Ajaan Mun's animated presence, while he conversed with Chow Kun Dhammachedi in the manner of a loving father reconnecting with his long-lost son, was a heartwarming sight. How rare it is in today's world to witness such a close and harmonious companionship. Rejoicing at the wonderful scene unfolding before me, I suddenly realized that monks who are truly sons of the Buddha possess the power to pass on the true spirit of the Dhamma to their disciples. The night we arrived at Chedi Luang Monastery, a large group of terrestrial devas paid a nocturnal visit to Ajaan Mun as he sat in meditation and pleaded with him to remain in the north for the benefit of the deva population there. Reluctant to see him leave, they insisted that devas from all realms experienced peace and contentment from the power of the loving kindness emanating from his presence. They were loath to see him leave, for they feared their sense of contentment would soon fade in his absence. Even their social harmony might be affected. Ajaan Mun told them that, having accepted an invitation and given his word, he was obliged to leave as planned. As a monk, he was duty-bound to honor his promise and remain true to his word. If he went back on a promise, his virtue would soon evaporate and his worth as a monk would diminish. He made it clear to them that a monk must preserve his moral integrity at all costs. Ajaan Mun remained at Chedi Luang Monastery for about 1 week. During that time, a large group of his local devotees came to try to persuade him to extend his stay in Chiang Mai for the benefit of the people living there. Repeating the response he had given to the terrestrial devas, he insisted that, having accepted the invitation to go to Udon Thani, he could not further delay his departure. After remaining several more days at Chedi Luang Monastery, Ajaan Mun and I departed on our journey to the northeast. As there was no direct railway line from Chiang Mai to Udon Thani in those days, our first stop would be Bangkok. Somdet Maha Boowa, one of the highest-ranking monks in the country, accompanied by other senior monks and a large group of lay supporters, escorted Ajaan Mun from the monastery to the train station. Also present on that occasion was a multitude of celestial devas. Ajaan Mun told me that the devas who came to escort him to the train station filled the sky around us in every direction. They hovered patiently in mid-air after he reached the station, waiting to send him off before returning to their respective celestial realms. On the ground, a hectic scene unfolded as Ajaan Mun greeted the scores of monks and lay people who were gathered to see him off, while at the same time intentionally bestowing his blessing on all the devas who hovered above. In the end, he was not able to focus his undivided attention on the devas and give them his final blessing until after he'd finished speaking to all the people gathered there and the train had begun pulling away from the station. Ajaan Mun felt compassion for the devas who held him in such high esteem. They showed the same signs of sadness and distress that human beings do when parting with a close relative. Some continued to hover behind the train as it sped down the tracks, until eventually Ajaan Mun felt it necessary to tell them to return to their celestial realms. They obeyed, reluctantly, wondering if he would ever bless them with his presence again. Upon our arrival in Bangkok, we took up residence at Boromaniwat Monastery, at the personal request of Somdet Maha Boowa. As usual, I served Ajaan Mun by arranging the lodgings to suit his needs, fetching water from the well for bathing, preparing his drinking water, sweeping his room, and taking care of his bowl and robes. During our stay in Bangkok, many people came to discuss the Dhamma with Ajaan Mun. Those discussions often centered on issues of moral virtue, which he addressed as follows. Practicing moral virtue requires keeping your actions and speech in good order. But before you can put your actions and speech in proper moral order, you must ascertain where the intentions behind these activities originate. They begin with the master of body and speech, the mind, which determines the moral quality of your behavior. Once you have established that the mind is the causal factor, you must learn the ways in which your intentions regulate action and speech, so that these activities remain blameless in all circumstances, and are thus a source of well-being for yourself and others. In this manner, the mind supervises the performance of every activity you engage in to ensure that your actions produce virtuous results every time. Safeguarding morality requires the mind to be skilled at controlling its intentions. Lack of such control will result in a stained moral fabric that is patchy and full of holes. The key to moral integrity is mindful awareness of your thoughts, coupled with the recognition of which urges are appropriate to act on and which are not. Pay attention to how you express yourself by way of body, speech, and mind. By monitoring these three behaviors so that actions stay within the confines of what is morally acceptable, you can be confident that your behavior will always be exemplary and never damaging or offensive. Apart from such exemplary supervision of body, speech, and mind, it's difficult to define what genuine moral virtue is, since it's impossible to separate its practice from the mind of the person who maintains it. Morality and the mind are not distinct entities like a house and its owner, so it's impossible to distinguish between moral virtue and the mental attitude that produces it. Further, the peace of mind resulting from the practice of moral precepts cannot be separated from the virtuous actions that created it. They are all bound up together. Those who understand these principles and practice accordingly remain content in all circumstances, for they never worry about lapses in their virtuous intentions. When he felt the time was appropriate, Ajaan Mun and I boarded the passenger train that traveled from Bangkok to Udon Thani. We stopped first at Korat, the capital of Nakhon Ratchasima, which was considered the gateway to the Lao-speaking northeastern region. Lay devotees who wanted to make his acquaintance had asked Ajaan Mun to briefly stop over there. We stayed for several days at Sīlaratano Forest Monastery, where Ajaan Mun received numerous visitors who came to ask him questions about meditation practice. On one occasion, he answered questions from late morning until nightfall. A question I still remember concerned Ajaan Mun's reason for journeying to Nakhon Ratchasima. Was his purpose to seek seclusion and strive for Nibbāna? His response was striking. Being neither hungry nor deluded, I'm not searching for anything to create suffering or cause myself trouble. Restless and hungry people are never content with what they have. They run around creating difficulties here and there, doing whatever they please without considering if their behavior is morally correct or not. In the end, that restless hunger consumes their hearts like a blazing fire. Deluded people are always searching for wealth, status, praise, and pleasure. The wise, however, have ceased searching. Everything is already perfect within their hearts, so why should they waste their time looking for more? Why should they eagerly grasp at shadows when they know perfectly well that shadows are illusory? The Four Noble Truths are real, and they display themselves constantly within the minds and bodies of all living beings. Having fully understood those truths, I myself am no longer deluded, and thus have nothing further to seek. As long as I am still alive and people need my help, I will do my best to assist them. It's as simple as that. The Buddha taught that we are always subject to the law of cause and effect, which is to say the law of karma. A cornerstone of his teachings says that where there is birth, there is also death, that actions bring consequences. In everyday life, even people who do not think carefully about actions and their consequences still try to produce the causes that bring them good and beneficial results. It is natural for people to want to better their situation and be successful in life. But regardless of what efforts they have made to be successful, at the time of death all their material gains are left behind. All things are like bubbles. They appear and disappear, impermanent and ever-changing. This truth applies not only to human beings but also to all material things in the world. Everything must go through a time of arising, a time of staying, and a time of passing away. In the case of human beings, we perceive this truth in the process of birth, aging, sickness, and death. Ultimately, the varying results that you experience in life depend on the deeds you have done and the karmic consequences you have created by the quality of your actions. You have no recourse but to accept the outcomes dictated by your karma. It's for this very reason that living beings differ so widely in everything from the quality of their next life, with its potential for different bodily forms and emotional temperaments, to the degrees of pleasure and pain they experience in that subsequent lifetime. All such consequences form part of their own personal makeup, a personal destiny for which each of them must take full responsibility. They must learn to live with the good and the bad, the pleasant and the painful experiences that come their way, for no one has the power to disown the consequences of their actions. For this reason, you must pay careful attention to your conduct in everyday life. Be wary, lest the intentions behind your behavior become the cause of misfortune and suffering now or in the future. Rather than simply acting on impulse, use discretion to safeguard your prospects of experiencing good fortune. Pay attention to what you are involving yourself in, what you are involving other people in, and how that involvement will affect you in the future. In the end, every action you take results in karmic consequences. Good and bad acts of body, speech, and mind bring their corresponding outcomes, and their cumulative effect will shape your spiritual welfare going forward. So be careful not to unwittingly create a store of unwanted results and a future of unwelcome suffering. Before long, Ajaan Mun and I left Nakhon Ratchasima and resumed our journey to Udon Thani. When our train pulled into the bustling station at Kongen, some of Ajaan Mun's relatives who lived in the city were waiting there to greet him. They wished to invite him to disembark and break his journey there. They pleaded with him to stay in Kongen for a while out of compassion for his devotees. Since he was determined to push on to his final destination, he was forced to disappoint his relatives on that occasion. When Ajaan Mun and I finally arrived in Udon Thani, we stayed with Chow Kun Dhammachedi at Bodhisomporn Monastery in the provincial capital. People from the provinces of Nong Khai and Sakon Nakhon, in addition to those from Udon Thani, were waiting there to pay respects to him and listen to him expound on the Dhamma. Ajaan Mun soon felt hemmed in on all sides by the crowds of devotees that visited the city monastery. So after several days, he asked Chow Kun Dhammachedi to take him to a charnel ground somewhere in the jungle surrounding Udon Thani. In his Dhutanga travels, Ajaan Mun was always on the lookout for secluded sites where he could set up his umbrella tent and camp out in solitude. He found that charnel grounds were places that naturally encouraged alertness and introspection. After considering the options, Chow Kun Dhammachedi suggested a site near Non Ni Wait, which was located in a quiet and undisturbed forested area. It remained secluded because the locals, fearing the wrath of fierce ghosts, did not dare to approach the area. Non Ni Wait's charnel ground was a place where local villagers discarded the corpses of thieves and murderers, throwing their bodies on the barren earth to decay and attract scavenging animals. As a result, the site provoked fear and dread in the hearts of the villagers. Ajaan Mun and I moved to Non Ni Wait, set up our umbrella tents under the shade of the trees bordering the open, corpse-strewn clearing, and settled there to begin the rainy season retreat. Once each week during the retreat that year, Chow Kun Dhammachedi escorted a group of public officials and other lay supporters from the city to visit Ajaan Mun, listen to his evening Dhamma talks, and ask him questions. I recall one questioner who asked if the attraction felt between a married couple occurs as a result of previous relationships in past lives. Ajaan Mun's reply set the record straight. It is very difficult to know, with any certainty, whether or not our love for this person or our relationship with that person has its roots in a mutual affinity developed over many lifetimes. For the most part, people fall in love and get married rather blindly. Feeling hungry, a person's normal tendency is to reach out and grab some food to satisfy that hunger. They will eat whatever is available if it is sufficient for their day-to-day needs. The same can be said for past life associations as well. Although such relationships are a common feature of worldly life, it's not at all easy to find genuine cases of people who fall in love and get married simply due to a long-standing past life association. That's because the emotional defilements which cause people to fall in love don't spare anyone's blushes. And they certainly don't wait patiently to give past life affinities a chance to have a say in the matter first. All those defilements ask is that there is someone of the opposite sex who suits their fancy. That's enough for passion to arise and impulsively grab a hold. Those defiling forces that cause people to fall in love can turn ordinary people into aggressive competitors who will battle to the bitter end without respect for modesty or moderation, no matter what the consequences might be. Even if they realize they've made a mistake, they still refuse to budge. Even the prospect of death cannot make them abandon their unrestrained passions. This self-indulgence is the root of the emotional defilements that cause people to fall in love. Displaying itself conspicuously in people's hearts, such self-indulgence is extremely difficult to control. Chow Kun Dhammachedi had gone out of his way to invite Ajaan Mun to Udon Thani, trekking for days through the mountains and forests of Chiang Mai to personally present his request. He had always shown a keen interest in the way of practice, and never tired of talking about Buddhist principles, no matter how long the conversation lasted. He was especially appreciative when the discussion concerned meditation practice, because he felt great respect and affection for Ajaan Mun. He took a special interest in his welfare, constantly asking people who had seen Ajaan Mun about the state of his health. In addition, he encouraged people to meet with Ajaan Mun and get to know him, even going so far as to accompany those who did not dare go alone. The Dhamma talks that Ajaan Mun gave when monks visited him at Nonni Wait were always inspiring and insightful. A typical talk went like this. Only a monk who is firm in his discipline and respectful of all the training rules can be considered a fully fledged monk. He does not transgress the minor training rules merely because he considers them to be insignificant. Such negligence by a monk indicates that he feels no shame about improper behavior, a fault which may eventually lead him to commit more serious transgressions. A virtuous monk strictly adheres to the monastic code of discipline to ensure that his behavior is not stained by unsightly blemishes. By doing so, he feels comfortable and confident living among his peers, without concern that his teacher or his fellow monks will have reason to be critical or reproachful. For the inner monk in your heart to reach perfection, you must be steady and relentless in your efforts to attain each successive level of both samadhi and wisdom. The present moment is where your mind must be focused. With your mind anchored in the present, worries and concerns about the past and future drop away, and you cease to send your awareness out to chase after restive thoughts that are disconnected from the present moment. Grounding your mind in the present means being mindful of what is front and center in your awareness at each moment. Well-trained mindfulness has the ability to move effortlessly from moment to moment with the natural spontaneity and fluid momentum gained from cultivating heightened awareness through consistent practice. When you persevere in this practice, skillful mental states will arise naturally and continue to gain strength until they are powerful enough to scrub clean the stains and blemishes that the defilements have produced to pollute your mind. When a monk's conduct is wholly above reproach, his mind will be gladdened by the Dhamma qualities that he cultivates. A monk should never appear dreary or sad, nor should he appear undignified, shunning his fellow monks because a guilty conscience is troubling his heart. Such negligent behavior runs contrary to the discipline espoused by the Lord Buddha, whose internal conduct and external behavior were both impeccable. To follow in his footsteps, a monk has to muster the courage needed to forsake all forms of evil and instead engage only in good deeds. He must be a man of integrity who is honest with himself and his peers, while being faithful to the Dhamma teachings and the Vinaya rules. His meditation practice will thus be supported by his exemplary behavior wherever he goes. The brightness of his mindfulness and wisdom will light the way to a mind suffused with the essence of Dhamma. He will never again find himself trapped in a dark web of delusion with no means of escape. These are the inner qualities cultivated by a true disciple of the Lord Buddha. Study them carefully and continually bear them in mind.